Have you ever observed the brutal disparity in how marriage transforms men? How some seem to gain instantaneous authority the moment the ring settles on their finger, while others hemorrhage respect overnight? Two men make the identical solemn vow, stand before the same altar, and speak the same words, yet one emerges armored, stronger than before, while the other becomes visibly trapped, diminished by the very bond supposed to elevate him. This divergence is not a matter of romantic depth. It is not a matter of moral character. It is determined entirely by what these men possessed before they said, "I do." We are saturated with the cultural narrative that marriage is a moral milestone, the ultimate signifier of maturity and definitive proof of commitment. Society sells it as a stabilizing force, but history, a far colder and more honest teacher, reveals a different reality. Marriage does not elevate a man's fundamental condition, it magnifies it. It is not a corrective mechanism, it is an accelerant. If you enter this institution already possessing strength and surplus, marriage amplifies your influence. But if you enter it poor, constrained by lack, driven by need rather than choice, marriage magnifies that weakness, deepens that dependency, and illuminates a quiet, desperate reality that can no longer be hidden. When a man lacks resources, the world does not look at him and see a loving husband. It sees a liability. They see a man who must provide under duress, must comply to survive, and must endure without complaint. And when the inevitable moment arrives where he cannot meet those demands, respect does not merely fade, it evaporates. Slowly at first, eroding at the margins, and then collapsing all at once. Niccolo Machiavelli understood this ruthless truth centuries ago. He warned that institutions designed to stabilize power will utterly destroy men who enter them without leverage. Marriage is preeminent among those institutions. You have witnessed this slow-motion catastrophe in the lives of men around you. You have watched men become cautious, smaller, visibly obedient, not because they desired domestication, but because poverty left them no strategic room to maneuver. The same bond that crowns a powerful man will suffocate a poor one. Once you grasp the mechanics of why this happens, you will realize this has absolutely nothing to do with romance. It is entirely about survival, leverage, and the catastrophic cost of committing too early to a structure that demands what you do not yet possess. We must first understand the true nature of poverty in this context. Poverty is not merely a lack of virtue, nor is it a stain on the soul, as some might secretly believe. It is a condition of operational paralysis. It is a state that strips a man of leverage, and leverage is the only language the world truly understands and respects. When a man is poor, every choice he makes is subjected to forensic scrutiny, measured and judged through an unforgiving lens of weakness. He may speak with absolute honesty, yet his reasons will sound like excuses. He may promise undying loyalty, yet it will feel like clingy dependence. He may profess profound love, but it will be interpreted by the world as profound need. Society pretends to admire humility, yet in practice, it punishes it relentlessly. Nowhere is this cruelty more exposed than within the confines of marriage, a contract praised universally as sacred, while functioning in reality as one of the most unforgiving financial and psychological negotiations ever devised. When a poor man enters marriage, he does not enter as an equal stakeholder. He enters as a liability hoping to be tolerated. And tolerance is the most fragile, shifting foundation upon which to build a life. Marriage does not soften the sharp edges of poverty, it hones them to a razor's point. Two people do not magically become stronger simply because they occupy the same space, especially when one is already fundamentally constrained. Scarcity does not foster bonding, it multiplies stress, and stress is an acid that corrodes affection. Love spoken under conditions of abundance sounds like generosity of spirit. Love spoken under conditions of lack sounds like a contractual obligation. A poor man may sincerely believe that marriage will grant him stability,
that partnership will lend him borrowed strength, and that shared struggle will forge unbreakable loyalty. This belief is profoundly comforting, and that is precisely why it is so dangerous. Comfort is the enemy of clarity. Marriage is indifferent to your intentions. It rewards only your capacity. It does not honor effort, it honors outcomes. When resources are thin, the margin for error vanishes. Every failure becomes highly visible. Every delay in progress is taken personally by those depending on you. Every misstep is cataloged as evidence of inadequacy. Over time, respect erodes quietly, not necessarily through dramatic betrayals, but through the drip torture of daily disappointments that no amount of apologizing can fully erase.
A man without resources has zero margin for error, yet he has bound himself to a structure that punishes error relentlessly. When money is scarce, time becomes scarce, because every waking hour must be dedicated to immediate survival. When time is scarce, patience disappears. The texture of the relationship changes. Arguments no longer revolve around character or nuanced disagreements, they revolve around base survival. Bills speak louder than vows. Hunger overrides romance. Chronic fatigue replaces tenderness. The world conditions men to believe that sacrifice earns love. It is a lie. In reality, sacrifice only earns sympathy, and sympathy has a very short expiration date. Lasting respect between adults is not built on suffering together in the mud. It is built on security provided from strength. When a man cannot provide that baseline stability, he becomes subject to perpetual scrutiny within his own home. Every purchase is silently questioned. Every delay in career advancement is noted on a mental scoreboard. Every ambition he voices is met not with encouragement, but with immediate anxiety about the risk involved. This is not because his partner is inherently cruel. It is because fear reshapes perception, and poverty breeds fear faster than any other condition on earth. The poor man in marriage lives under constant low-level evaluation. Even when the house is quiet, silence itself becomes a form of judgment. His partner may still care deeply, may still hope for his success, may still defend him fiercely in public, but inwardly a ledger is forming. Promises are compared against results. Dreams are weighed against past due deadlines. Love slowly becomes conditional without anyone ever announcing that the terms have changed. This is the silent transformation that destroys men who believed that virtue alone would carry them through the storm. A poor man may work harder than any wealthy man he knows, yet effort without leverage is invisible. The world does not reward struggle, it rewards dominance over circumstances. Marriage does not exist outside this rule. It amplifies it within the most intimate sphere of life. What begins as a pact of mutual support slowly shifts into expectation, then curdles into resentment, and finally settles into quiet contempt masked by daily routine. Crucially, poverty removes a man's ability to lead effectively. Leadership is the unspoken backbone of attraction and authority within a family unit. A man who cannot decide freely because he is hamstrung by lack is not free to lead. A man who must calculate every microscopic move based on immediate financial cost is not commanding, he is reactive. Marriage demands decisiveness, especially in moments of uncertainty. Yet poverty forces hesitation. When choices are constrained by survival, true authority dissolves. The household begins to orbit around limitation rather than vision. Plans shrink to fit the available resources. Risks disappear because they cannot be afforded. Life becomes fundamentally defensive. Over time, the poor man adapts by minimizing himself, shrinking his footprint to avoid conflict, falsely believing that peace is the same thing as preservation. In truth, this withdrawal signals defeat. Once a man starts negotiating for his own presence, instead of asserting direction, he has already surrendered the psychological ground that marriage requires him to hold.
There is a deeper structural danger here, one rarely spoken aloud. Marriage binds a man legally, socially, and morally at the exact moment in his development when he most needs maximum flexibility. Poverty demands mobility, extreme risk-taking, and sometimes ruthless self-prioritization to escape its gravitational pull. Marriage, by contrast, demands stability, predictability, and the sacrifice of individual ambition for the sake of shared safety. These demands are fundamentally incompatible when resources are insufficient. A poor man seeking to rise cannot afford to be predictable. He cannot afford to be gentle with his time. He cannot afford to dilute his laser focus with domestic concerns. Yet marriage expects precisely that dilution. It rewards compromise and punishes obsession. But obsession is often the only available path out of poverty. By marrying too early, a poor man ties heavy weights to his own ascent and calls it responsibility, mistaking catastrophic constraint for maturity. Society will shame this truth because it threatens a comforting cultural myth. Society prefers to believe that love conquers conditions, that unity overrides economics, and that commitment can transform reality. These beliefs keep people obedient and hopeful, but they do not keep them powerful. Power requires timing. Power requires rigorous sequencing. A man must first secure his own position in the world before inviting another to stand beside him under his protection. To do otherwise is not noble, it is negligent. The tragedy is not simply that poor men marry and suffer for it. The true tragedy is that they are taught from birth that this suffering is honorable, that endurance is the highest virtue, and that breaking under the weight of a premature bond is a personal failure rather than a structural inevitability.
Once a man realizes this, once he sees that marriage under poverty is not a sanctuary, but a crucible designed to expose weakness, he must confront a far more dangerous question about what the world truly expects from him next. Once a man is bound while poor, he no longer moves according to his own long-term strategy. He moves according to immediate pressure. Every decision becomes reactive, shaped not by a multi-year vision, but by the immediate consequence of the day. He wakes up not asking what action advances my position, but rather what action avoids conflict today. This is how ambition is domesticated. Marriage does not destroy a man instantly. It trains him slowly over thousands of days to fear disruption. He learns to postpone risk, to delay decisive action, to choose the sedative of certainty over the volatility of ascent. Poverty already limits options, but marriage hardens those limits into unbreakable rules. What was intended as temporary sacrifice becomes permanent expectation. Soon, the man who needed boldness to escape his condition becomes trapped by the very structure he believed would save him. A poor man in marriage is never judged by his intent, but strictly by his utility. His worth is measured in outcomes he cannot yet reliably produce. This creates a quiet, corrosive imbalance that grows sharper with time. Partnership is replaced by dependency. Desire is replaced by gratitude, and gratitude, unlike desire, does not inspire passion or loyalty. It inspires patience, and patience always wears thin. The man senses this shift, but often misnames it. He believes the problem is communication or stress or bad luck. He does not realize the real fracture lies in the foundational power dynamic. Marriage exposes power disparities brutally. When one partner depends significantly more on the other for basics, the dynamic tilts irreparably. When resources are scarce, dependence becomes glaringly visible, and respect begins to negotiate its exit. The cruel irony is that the poor man is often more morally disciplined than the wealthy one. He is cautious, restrained, conscientious. Yet these traits, admired in isolation, become massive liabilities under pressure. Restraint looks like hesitation. Caution looks like fear. Conscientiousness looks like weakness when the world demands brute results. Marriage magnifies perception. The partner sees not only the man, but the iron cage of limits that surrounds him. She feels those limits in missed opportunities, in delayed milestones, in futures discussed passionately but never reached. Over time, her faith becomes conditional on progress, and progress under constraint is agonizingly slow. Belief slowly transforms into doubt, and doubt corrodes intimacy faster than betrayal ever could. The man senses this shift but often misnames it. He believes the problem is communication or stress or bad luck. He does not realize the real fracture lies in the foundational power dynamic. When a man gives everything he has and still cannot change the fundamental conditions, he does not become heroic in the eyes of his household. He becomes predictable. Predictability is not security. When predictability produces no advancement, it is merely stagnation. And stagnation, once perceived by a partner, cannot be unseen. Poverty strips a man of mystery, and mystery is essential to authority. When every move must be explained because of its cost, every delay justified, every decision constrained by pennies, the man becomes completely transparent. Transparency sounds virtuous, but it invites constant evaluation. Evaluation invites comparison. Comparison invites dissatisfaction. A man who must constantly explain why he cannot do something slowly loses the right to decide what should be done. His world shrinks into maintenance mode. Dreams become hypothetical conversations. Leadership dissolves into endless negotiation. And once a man is negotiating for permission rather than directing toward a future, he is no longer the axis around which the household turns. There is another danger here, colder and more final. Marriage, while poor, creates permanent witnesses to failure. Struggle alone is private. Struggle observed becomes a narrative. The partner becomes the keeper of a man's lowest chapters, his repeated attempts, his unfulfilled promises. Even if she never weaponizes this knowledge, it exists between them. Power is always painfully aware of who knows its deepest weaknesses. A man who rises later must do so under the shadow of a past shared too early. He cannot rewrite perception easily. The image formed during scarcity lingers long after conditions change. People adjust slowly to new hierarchies, especially when they believe they understand your fundamental limits.
This is why timing matters infinitely more than sentiment. Power is not opposed to love, it simply refuses to be built on the foundation of hope alone. A man must first establish his independence before offering union. He must arrive with surplus, not hunger, with choice, not need. Marriage entered from strength is an alliance. Marriage entered from poverty is a negotiation under duress. And negotiations under duress rarely favor the weaker party. As this hard truth settles in, another realization emerges, more unsettling than the last. Poverty does not only make marriage difficult, it trains a man to accept conditions he should have rejected long before he ever committed. Once a man has been conditioned to accept unfavorable terms in life, he carries that conditioning into every corner of his existence, including his marriage. The man learns to tolerate imbalance because he has been taught that endurance is a virtue. He learns to suppress instinct because instinct threatens the fragile stability of the home. Over time, this suppression becomes his character. He no longer recognizes when a boundary has been crossed because he abandoned his boundaries early in exchange for peace. This is how men become manageable, not through overt force, but through obligation layered upon obligation until resistance feels immoral. The household becomes a system of quiet surveillance. Every action is observed, every decision evaluated for risk, not because the partner is malicious, but because scarcity demands hypervigilance. Fear makes everyone a watchman. The man feels this gaze constantly. He adjusts his tone, his ambition, and his desires to avoid friction. Slowly, he stops asking what he wants and starts asking what will be allowed. This shift is fatal to power. Authority cannot exist where permission is continually required. A poor man also loses the luxury of silence. Silence is power when it conceals intention, but poverty forces explanation. He must explain delays, justify risks, defend plans that have not yet paid off. Explanation diminishes stature. The more a man explains, the more he invites judgment. Judgment invites doubt. Doubt invites control. Marriage accelerates this cycle. What could have been a period of quiet construction becomes a constant defense of his own existence. His mind shifts from creation to reassurance, from strategy to appeasement. And a man who is busy appeasing others cannot intimidate fate into yielding to him. There is a massive psychological toll here that rarely receives attention. When a man binds himself while poor, he internalizes failure as identity rather than mere circumstance. Each missed target feels personal. Each compromise feels permanent. He begins to see himself through the eyes of someone waiting for him to become more than he currently is. This waiting is heavy. It reshapes his posture, his speech, and his self-concept. Confidence becomes performative rather than grounded. Hope becomes fragile. The man no longer believes expansion is inevitable. He treats it as conditional. And conditional belief produces conditional action, hesitant and fragmented. Marriage anchors a man to routine at the exact stage where disruption is necessary. Poverty is escaped only through asymmetry, through moves that appear irrational to the cautious mind. Long hours, unstable income, social risk, obsession that borders on madness. These behaviors are intolerable within a marriage that depends on predictability for emotional survival. The partner may offer words of support, but her nervous system seeks stability. Her fear speaks louder than her faith, and fear always votes against risk. Thus, the man trims his ambition to preserve harmony, unaware that harmony purchased at the cost of his trajectory is simply decay slowed to a polite pace. Resentment turns inward. The man cannot openly resent the structure because he chose it. He cannot resent his partner because she is also constrained by his lack. So he resents himself. Self-directed resentment is corrosive. It manifests as fatigue, irritability, and apathy. He loses his sharpness, his edge. The hunger that once drove him dulls into routine effort. He tells himself this is maturity. In truth, it is domestication. The wildness required to escape limitation has been traded for a responsibility that produces no leverage. History shows repeatedly that men who rise from nothing do so through periods of ruthless focus, unshared hardship, and singular obsession. They are not cruel, but timing demands isolation. The world does not reward divided attention, it rewards total commitment. Marriage under poverty fractures commitment by design. It asks a man to give emotionally what he cannot yet give materially, and the imbalance poisons both. By the time resources finally appear, if they ever do, the man is already shaped by years of compromise. The ascent is slower, heavier, burdened by expectations forged in scarcity. Once a man recognizes that his greatest obstacle was never lack of effort but premature obligation, he must face an even harsher realization about how easily loyalty is demanded before power is earned. Loyalty demanded before power is earned is not loyalty at all. It is leverage disguised as devotion. A poor man who marries is asked to prove reliability without being granted authority. He is expected to uphold promises while lacking the means to enforce them. This inversion quietly humiliates him. Humiliation does not always arrive as ridicule. Often it arrives as expectation without capacity.
The structure of marriage creates witnesses to hesitation. Every retreat from risk is observed and remembered. Even when forgiveness is granted, memory remains. People do not forget patterns, they tolerate them until they no longer can. A man who repeatedly delays advancement trains those around him to expect delay. Expectation shapes treatment, and treatment shapes self-image. The poor man becomes the man who is always almost there. Almost is the most dangerous word in existence. It keeps hope alive while draining urgency. It allows decline to masquerade as patience. Another transformation occurs that few men anticipate. Desire shifts into obligation. What was once freely given becomes required. Affection becomes scheduled. Intimacy becomes conditional on mood, shaped by financial stress. The man senses that love is now intertwined with performance, yet performance under scarcity is erratic. This creates an anxiety that never fully sleeps. Anxiety destroys presence, and a man who cannot be present cannot command attention. He may still be physically there, but his mind is elsewhere, calculating survival. Over time, attraction weakens, not because love vanished, but because tension replaced polarity. The poor man becomes safe, predictable, and exhausted. None of these traits inspire reverence. Poverty also limits generosity, and generosity is a powerful tool of authority. A man who cannot give freely feels indebted even when no debt is claimed. He hesitates to assert himself because he feels he has not earned the right. This internal accounting is devastating. Power requires the assumption of worth, not the constant proof of it. The wealthy man gives and is thanked. The poor man receives and feels watched. Marriage amplifies this imbalance. Every sacrifice offered by the partner, real or imagined, becomes a silent reminder of his deficiency. Even kindness, when repeated under strain, becomes an entry in a ledger, and ledgers always produce a reckoning. The most dangerous illusion is the belief that shared struggle creates unbreakable bonds. Shared struggle creates shared memory, not shared power. When the struggle ends, the memory remains, shaping how each person is seen. A man who was weak once is rarely seen as fully strong later by those who watched him struggle closely. First impressions formed under scarcity harden into identity. Marriage ensures those impressions are intimate and enduring. The man may change, but perception lags behind reality. He must work twice as hard to be seen as half as formidable. This is not cruelty, it is human nature observing consistency. The final trap is moral. The poor man is praised for choosing responsibility, for honoring commitment, for valuing family over ambition. Society applauds him because his choice reassures others that restraint is noble. Yet the same society quietly ignores his stagnation. Praise replaces reward. Approval replaces advancement. He becomes a symbol rather than a force. Symbols are celebrated. Forces are feared. History remembers forces. As this realization sharpens, the man must confront a truth more bitter than poverty itself. That restraint praised too early becomes a cage disguised as virtue, and escaping it requires a ruthlessness he was taught to abandon long ago. To escape a cage disguised as virtue, a man must first admit that virtue has been used against him as a weapon. Marriage under poverty weaponizes morality by turning patience into obligation and loyalty into restraint. The man is praised for enduring conditions that slowly drain his capacity to change them. Each compliment becomes a sedative. Each encouragement to persevere becomes a reminder to stay in your place. The system does not need to punish him overtly. It simply needs him to believe that suffering is proof of character. Once he accepts that belief, he polices himself. The poor married man also becomes vulnerable to manipulation through guilt. Guilt is the most effective leash because it convinces the restrained that resistance is selfish. He is told that prioritizing ambition is abandonment, that risk is irresponsibility, that focus is neglect. These accusations do not need to be spoken aloud to work. He internalizes them and censors his own instincts. Even moments of clarity are suppressed by imagined consequences. He asks himself, who will be disappointed? Who will feel unsafe if I choose myself? Power evaporates in this calculation. A man who must ask permission from ghosts cannot move decisively in the real world. As years pass, the man's environment adapts to his limitations. Friends stop expecting boldness. Opportunities are no longer offered because hesitation is assumed. The world mirrors what it senses. Poverty is not only financial, it is reputational. Marriage fixes that reputation early. It signals to the world that this man has settled into stability, that he has chosen maintenance over conquest. Even if he dreams otherwise, perception hardens around him. Networks close quietly. Doors do not slam, they simply stop opening. The man mistakes this silence for peace, unaware that momentum has abandoned him. There is also the matter of the inheritance of weakness. Children, when present, absorb not only values, but atmosphere. They learn caution from fear, restraint from scarcity, compromise from observation. The man tells himself he is building something noble, yet he is transmitting limits. Poverty combined with obligation teaches survival, not dominance. Survival is not a legacy.
Legacy requires surplus vision and the willingness to prioritize the future over present comfort. Marriage under poverty binds the man to the present so tightly that the future becomes abstract. The cruelest aspect is that escape becomes more difficult the longer one waits. Obligations compound, expectations solidify. The cost of disruption increases exponentially. What could have been a sharp, temporary rupture years ago becomes an unimaginable upheaval now. The man delays again, believing patience will one day be rewarded. But time does not reward patience, it rewards positioning. While he waits, others advance. They acquire leverage, visibility, options. By the time the poor married man finally feels the undeniable urgency, he is surrounded by reasons to stay still. The system has done its work perfectly. This is why the decision must be made before attachment, not after disillusionment. Power is merciless about sequence. First position, then partnership. First surplus, then sharing. First independence, then union. To reverse the order is to invite a struggle that feels noble but produces nothing of lasting force. A man who understands this does not despise marriage. He respects it enough to refuse to enter it prematurely. He knows that entering union from weakness poisons what could have been an alliance. As this understanding settles, another, more dangerous thought rises, that many structures praised as moral are merely mechanisms designed to stabilize men before they become difficult to control. Control rarely arrives as overt command. It arrives as consent shaped by fear. Structures do not restrain men by force alone, but by timing obligations before leverage exists. Marriage under poverty is one of the most effective of these structures because it binds a man emotionally while he is still economically fragile. It converts hope into responsibility and ambition into risk. Once bound, the man becomes predictable, and predictability is the enemy of power. Systems prefer men who can be forecasted, managed, and soothed. A man who must account for others before securing himself is already half neutralized. He may still dream of ascent, but his movements have slowed, his angles limited, his willingness to disrupt dulled. The poor married man is taught to confuse stability with strength. Stability feels virtuous because it calms anxiety, yet strength is disruptive by nature. Strength rearranges hierarchies, it breaks routines, it alarms those who depend on sameness. Marriage under scarcity trains a man to value calm over momentum. He learns to fear upheaval because upheaval threatens the fragile balance holding everything together. This fear becomes internalized. Even when opportunities rise that require chaos to unlock growth, he hesitates. He chooses preservation over expansion. In doing so, he trades the possibility of future dominance for the certainty of present order. A man accustomed to negotiating for peace at home becomes adept at submission elsewhere. He avoids confrontation with employers, institutions, and rivals because conflict has been framed as danger rather than opportunity. Poverty taught him caution, marriage codified it. He learns to accept unfavorable terms, telling himself compromise is wisdom.
But power is not accumulated through compromise with those who already hold leverage. It is accumulated through refusal, through walking away, through tolerating short-term instability for long-term advantage. The poor married man rarely walks away. He cannot afford to. And what a man cannot afford to do controls him completely. The man may still speak of principles, honor, and responsibility. These words may even be sincere, yet sincerity does not intimidate reality. Reality responds only to pressure. A man without surplus cannot apply pressure. Marriage drains surplus before it exists. Emotional labor, financial obligation, social expectation, and moral restraint all draw from the same limited reserve. The man gives until nothing remains, then wonders why the world does not bend to him. He has mistaken depletion for virtue. Virtue without leverage is merely decoration. It impresses no one who matters. As years accumulate, the man's self-concept hardens around his limitations. He stops imagining radical change because imagination without permission feels dangerous. He learns to adjust expectations downward to avoid disappointment. This adjustment feels like maturity, but it is adaptation to constraint. The mind reshapes itself to fit the cage. Once that happens, escape requires not effort, but violence against one's own identity. The man must be willing to betray the version of himself that learned to survive quietly. Few men are prepared for this. It feels like abandoning loved ones, values, and personal history all at once. So most do not attempt it. They call endurance wisdom, and they call stagnation peace. It is important to understand that this outcome is not the result of malice. No conspirators planned to trap poor men through marriage. The mechanism works precisely because it feels natural. Love, duty, and responsibility are powerful incentives. They are also efficient restraints when introduced too early. Systems prefer early binding because it stabilizes populations. A man who must feed a family does not revolt easily. A man who fears disruption does not challenge order. Marriage under poverty serves society well. It keeps men focused on maintenance instead of transformation. It produces workers, not disruptors, caretakers, not conquerors.
The lesson, then, is not hatred of union or contempt for commitment. It is respect for sequence. Power respects order. First, establish independence, then invite attachment. First, become difficult to replace, then become generous. First, command your own fate, then intertwine it with another's. To reverse this order is to gamble with loaded dice. A man who understands this does not rush into bonds to prove his virtue. He delays to build capacity. He accepts temporary loneliness to avoid permanent limitation. As this truth settles deeper, it forces him to confront an even more unsettling possibility, that many of the choices praised as selfless are only praised because they prevent men from becoming dangerous before the world is ready to deal with them. When a man begins to sense that the world fears him becoming dangerous, he is tempted to dismiss the thought as arrogance. He has been trained to distrust his own potential, yet power has always been cautious about who is allowed to rise unencumbered. Men without attachments move unpredictably. They can take risks others cannot. They can disappear, reappear, rebuild, and burn bridges without collapsing a household behind them. This freedom is unsettling to systems that rely on continuity. Marriage under poverty removes this threat early. It anchors the man to place, routine, and obligation before he has proven what he could become. In doing so, it neutralizes possibility without ever appearing hostile to it. The man who accepts early binding is often told he is mature, responsible, grounded. These words are rewards for compliance, not indicators of strength. They soothe the ego while narrowing the future. The man is praised for staying, for enduring, for being reasonable. Reasonable men are easy to manage. They do not shock the hierarchy. They ask for permission where others take initiative. Over time, the reasonable man forgets how to be unreasonable, and unreasonableness is often the prerequisite for dominance. Every major shift in history was initiated by someone unwilling to accept the terms offered to him at the time. Poverty married to obligation creates a fear of loss that vastly outweighs desire for gain. Loss becomes vivid because it is immediate and shared. Gain feels abstract because it is delayed and uncertain. The man calculates downside relentlessly, while upside fades into theory. This imbalance paralyzes him. He becomes conservative not by ideology, but by exhaustion. When energy is constantly spent maintaining stability, there is little left for expansion. The man does not fail dramatically, he plateaus quietly. Quiet plateaus are dangerous because they feel safe. Years can pass before he realizes nothing has changed except his tolerance for disappointment. He begins to soften his words to avoid stating harsh realities because they threaten harmony. He learns to edit himself. This self-censorship spills outward. He avoids confrontation with injustice, inefficiency, and disrespect in the outer world because he has learned that peace must be preserved at all costs. Yet peace purchased through silence accumulates debt. Unspoken truths rot. Authority requires the willingness to speak what destabilizes. A man who has trained himself to prioritize comfort over clarity loses this edge. His presence becomes agreeable rather than formidable. Agreeable men are liked, they are rarely followed. The man senses this and delays further, mistaking avoidance for patience. This loop continues until desire dulls and the question of escape feels irrelevant. At that point, the cage no longer needs a lock. The man guards it himself. It must be stated plainly, not all men are meant to rise quickly, and not all should avoid union. But a man who is poor and ambitious faces a specific danger. His hunger makes him susceptible to promises of stability that feel like progress but are merely postponement. Marriage offers meaning when identity is uncertain. It offers structure when direction is unclear. These offerings are seductive because they relieve anxiety, but relief is not advancement. Advancement requires tension, discomfort, and often isolation. A man cannot pursue ascent with full force while carrying the emotional weight of others who depend on his consistency for their own sense of safety. The world praises sacrifice because sacrifice stabilizes systems. It calls restraint wisdom because restraint prevents upheaval. It frames early obligation as virtue because it limits volatility. A man who understands power recognizes these incentives for what they are. He does not rage against them, he simply steps outside their timing. He delays binding not out of selfishness, but out of precision. He knows that entering union from weakness poisons both partners, while entering from strength elevates both. As this precision sharpens, he approaches a final, uncomfortable insight. Power does not ask permission to exist. Any structure that requires a man to prove his goodness before earning his freedom is not preparing him for greatness. It is protecting the world from the consequences of his unchecked ascent. Once a man accepts that freedom is something earned through leverage, not granted through good behavior, he begins to see how early bonds function as tests he was never meant to pass. They are not trials of strength, but of submission. Marriage under poverty tests whether a man will choose comfort over potential, whether he will trade future dominance for present approval. Most pass this test easily, and that is why it is administered so often. The reward is stability, the cost is trajectory.
Power does not punish men for refusing this bargain. It simply waits for those who do. Those who refuse appear reckless, selfish, even dangerous to the herd. These labels are warnings, not criticisms. They signal deviation from the expected path. A man who delays union while poor is often misunderstood. His restraint is framed as fear of commitment rather than respect for sequence. His solitude is treated as deficiency rather than strategy. Yet solitude grants clarity. It allows obsession without apology. It permits long hours, erratic income, relocation, and failure without collateral damage. These conditions are intolerable within marriage, but essential for escape from limitation. The world pretends these sacrifices can be shared. In truth, they cannot. Someone always pays the emotional cost. And when that cost is imposed rather than chosen freely, resentment grows. A man who rises must be ruthless about who bears the weight of his ascent. Bearing it alone is the cleanest option. There is also the matter of perception during ascent. A man who builds himself without witnesses controls his narrative. He reveals strength only once it is undeniable. Marriage during poverty exposes every weakness in real time. The man is seen struggling, doubting, recalibrating. When he later succeeds, observers remember the struggle more vividly than the victory. Respect is diluted by familiarity with weakness. Power thrives on selective revelation. It prefers distance. It prefers mystery. A man who reveals too much too early forfeits this advantage permanently. Those closest to him become anchored to an outdated image, and no amount of progress fully updates their perception. As wealth and leverage increase later in life, dynamics do not reset cleanly. They carry momentum from the past. Patterns formed under scarcity linger. Roles established early resist revision. A man who was once questioned must now assert himself against habits already ingrained in his partner. This assertion is interpreted as a negative change of character rather than the emergence of truth. The partner may feel displaced by the shift, threatened by an authority that arrives late. What should be celebration becomes tension. What should be alliance becomes renegotiation. The man wonders why success feels heavier than struggle. He does not realize he is fighting gravity created years earlier by his own premature choices. The deeper lesson is not that marriage is hostile to power, but that power is unforgiving about order. Sequence determines outcome. To invert sequence is to create friction that never fully disappears. A man who marries from strength enters as a chooser. A man who marries from poverty enters as an applicant. Applicants are evaluated. Choosers are accommodated. This difference echoes through every interaction for a lifetime. It shapes tone, expectation, forgiveness, and authority. Once set, it is difficult to reverse without significant conflict. And conflict within marriage is costly because it threatens the stability that justified the bond in the first place. Some men attempt to compensate by accumulating material success later, believing money alone will correct the imbalance. It rarely does. Money changes circumstances, not memory. It alters options, not identity. Authority is not purchased, it is assumed when conditions allow it to be assumed without resistance. Marriage under poverty teaches resistance. It trains those around the man to question his decisions, to expect explanation, to anticipate delay. The environment resists because it has learned a different rhythm. Power demands alignment. Alignment cannot be forced on those conditioned to another pace. Understanding this does not require bitterness, it requires realism. A man must ask not whether he deserves companionship, but when companionship strengthens rather than weakens his position. Desire is not a guide. Fear is not a guide. Only leverage clarifies timing. When a man has surplus, he can absorb compromise without losing momentum. When he has options, he can give without feeling indebted. When he has independence, he can bind himself without being bound. Marriage entered under these conditions becomes strategy rather than shelter. This is why restraint early is not the denial of love, but preparation for it in its highest form. A man who waits does not reject union, he preserves its value. He refuses to dilute partnership into mere mutual survival. He insists that when he offers himself, he does so from abundance, not hunger, from choice, not need. And as this understanding crystallizes, it leads him toward a final reckoning, one that challenges the most comforting belief of all, that good intentions protect men from bad outcomes. In truth, only power determines which intentions are allowed to succeed. When a man finally accepts that intentions are irrelevant without force, he stops asking whether his choices are kind and starts asking whether they are effective. This shift unsettles him because it contradicts everything he was praised for earlier in life. He was rewarded for being agreeable, dependable, and self-sacrificing. Yet none of these traits altered his position, they only made him predictable. Power does not emerge from predictability. It emerges from disruption controlled by strategy.
Marriage under poverty rewards predictability at the exact moment a man needs volatility. It teaches him to smooth edges instead of sharpening them, and edges are what cut paths through resistance. A man who remains unattached while poor retains the ability to recalibrate instantly. If an opportunity fails, he pivots without collateral damage. If a city becomes hostile to his ambitions, he leaves. If a risk demands total commitment, he gives it without apology. These freedoms are not luxuries, they are essential tools. Marriage removes them by design. It replaces optionality with obligation. Obligation narrows maneuvering space. Narrow space forces caution. Caution slows ascent. By the time the man recognizes the pattern, he has already internalized restraint as identity. He calls it responsibility because responsibility sounds noble. In reality, it is simply constraint accepted early. The danger intensifies when the man begins to believe that suffering itself will be rewarded by some cosmic force. He waits for recognition that never arrives. He expects endurance to convert automatically into authority. But power does not reward patience, it exploits it. Systems rely on patient men to keep moving quietly beneath louder, bolder actors. The patient man becomes infrastructure. Infrastructure is essential, but invisible. No one praises the foundation of a building unless it cracks. There is also the total erosion of self-trust. Each postponed risk teaches the man that his instinct is dangerous. Each compromise teaches him that his desire must be filtered. Over time, he no longer recognizes his own appetite for dominance. He confuses peace with fulfillment. This confusion is lethal to ambition. A man who cannot feel hunger cannot pursue conquest. Marriage under scarcity feeds just enough comfort to dull hunger, while maintaining just enough pressure to exhaust effort. It is a perfect equilibrium for stagnation. The world reinforces this trap with constant narratives of virtue. It praises the man for choosing family over ambition, for being grounded, for knowing his place. These compliments are subtle commands. They suggest that wanting more is immature, that dissatisfaction is ingratitude. The man absorbs these judgments and begins to police himself. He stops dreaming aloud. He avoids language that suggests disruption. His vision shrinks to maintenance and minor improvement. He becomes careful with words, careful with time, careful with hope. Carefulness becomes character, and character, once formed, resists transformation fiercely. Some men eventually reach a breaking point. They feel a surge of clarity, a violent awareness that their life is narrowing rather than expanding. In that moment, they face a brutal choice. Either they accept the narrowing and redefine it as contentment, or they attempt escape at great cost. Escape is not romantic. It demands conflict, disappointment, and accusations of betrayal. It requires the man to shatter an identity that others depend on for their own sense of safety. Most men retreat from this threshold. They choose peace. Peace, however, is not neutral. It sides with the status quo. It preserves hierarchy. It ensures the man remains exactly where he is. Those who do escape pay a price that is often misinterpreted by observers. They are labeled selfish, unstable, reckless. These labels function as warnings to others. They discourage imitation. The world punishes deviation to maintain order. But punishment does not mean error, it means threat. A man willing to disrupt expectation exposes how fragile those expectations were. That exposure is intolerable to systems built on compliance. Marriage under poverty is one of the earliest tools used to prevent such disruption by anchoring men before they learn how much force they could actually generate.
Understanding this does not absolve the man of responsibility, it intensifies it. He now must accept that his stagnation was not accidental. It was engineered through incentives he willingly accepted. This realization is heavy because it removes excuses. It leaves only choice. Either he continues to live as a stabilizing element for others, or he reclaims volatility and accepts the consequences. There is no third path. And as this truth settles fully, the final question emerges, sharper than any before. Does a man value being praised for his restraint more than he values becoming someone the world must reckon with? Once restraint is no longer an option, a man reaches the end of this reasoning. He stands alone with a decision that cannot be softened by polite language. He must choose whether his life will be organized around acceptance or around force. Acceptance offers immediate relief. Force offers delayed consequence. The world urges acceptance because acceptance preserves existing arrangements. Force unsettles them. A man who married under poverty already made this choice once, even if he did not know it at the time. He chose acceptance early, believing it would mature into power. Now he must decide whether to repeat that choice indefinitely or correct it while correction is still possible.
Correction is not gentle. It does not announce itself as growth. It arrives as rupture. The man who reclaims power must violate expectations he helped build. He must move in ways that feel disloyal to those who benefited from his previous restraint. This is why many men retreat at the final step. They confuse discomfort in others with moral error in themselves. They forget that morality without leverage is merely compliance with the loudest expectation in the room. Power does not ask whether it will offend, it asks whether it will succeed. A man who waits for universal approval will never move decisively enough to alter his position. The final illusion to discard is the belief that suffering has meaning on its own. It does not. Suffering only has meaning when it produces leverage. Otherwise, it is merely endurance mistaken for virtue. Marriage under poverty sanctifies endurance. It teaches men to wear limitation as proof of character. But character without command is irrelevant in the grand scheme. History does not measure goodness by patience. It measures impact by outcomes. The world is not cruel for this. It is merely consistent. A man who accepts this consistency stops pleading with reality and starts positioning against it. This is where timing reveals its true weight. The man who delays union until he has force enters marriage as a stabilizer rather than a stabilized object. He brings options instead of demands. He chooses rather than negotiates. He can afford generosity because generosity no longer threatens his own ascent. Love offered from strength is not anxious. It does not monitor, ration, or resent. It gives freely because it is not keeping score on a mental ledger of scarcity. Marriage entered this way becomes amplification, not restraint. It multiplies power instead of containing it. By contrast, the man who binds himself early carries scarcity into every interaction, even long after money appears. Scarcity is not erased by income, it is erased by position. Position comes from independence earned before attachment. Without that crucial sequence, wealth feels temporary, authority feels contested, and success feels fragile. The man may never articulate this, but he feels it in his bones. He senses that his power rests on unstable ground. He compensates with caution or controlling behavior, neither of which restores what was lost at the beginning. There is no condemnation here, only cold clarity. Some men will choose stability and call it peace. Others will choose force and accept the price. The tragedy lies not in either choice, but in making one without understanding its permanence. Marriage under poverty is not a mistake because it is immoral. It is a strategic error because it fixes a man's position before he has earned the right to choose how he will be fixed.
It finalizes identity too early. Power is patient, but it is unforgiving about sequence. A man who understands this truth does not argue with those who disagree. He moves quietly. He arranges his life so that when he commits from surplus. He does not announce his strategy, because strategy revealed becomes permission denied. He lets others praise restraint while he builds capacity in the shadows. He accepts temporary misunderstanding to avoid permanent limitation. When he finally binds himself, it is because binding no longer limits his movement. It formalizes his established power. Remember this final truth. Marriage is not the enemy of power. Premature binding is. Poverty is not shameful, but accepting permanent obligation under poverty is a strategic suicide. A man must first become someone the world cannot easily constrain. Only then should he invite another to share his path. Anything else is not sacrifice. It is surrender performed too early. Power respects those who wait until they can afford to give. It ignores and eventually crushes those who give before they can afford to refuse. If you have read this far, it is because a part of you already knows this truth. You know that poverty turns love into leverage and marriage into a cage. When a man lacks power, every promise he makes becomes a liability waiting to be called in. Every vow is a weakness waiting to be exploited by circumstance. Commitment without resources is not loyalty, it is exposure too early. Now, tell me in the comments, are you ready to build power before binding yourself to anyone? Are you willing to delay comfort today to avoid lifelong submission tomorrow? If this message touched a nerve, if it made sense of the quiet desperation you see around you, write in the comments, "I choose power first." Let's see how many here are truly willing to think long-term instead of emotionally. And do not forget to watch the next video. It is vital, much more than you currently imagine. See you there.